Alright, good afternoon YouTube. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the strategies that I use to build my own strength. I've been training with a barbell since I joined the military and got to my first duty station because that was when I had free access to a fully stacked gym with barbells, free weights, and everything such as that. Before that, I was training at like Planet Fitness or just my local park or the gym at my apartment complex when I was growing up, and that was it. That was all the equipment that I had starting out. It wasn't until I did join the military and get to my first duty station that I had access to things like barbells, and since then I've been doing almost exclusively barbell style training. So I'm 23 years old, 260 pounds. I can bench press 325, squat 375, and pull 545. Those are my maxes on the big three. And these are some of the strategies that I use to build that up, especially in 2019. So in 2019, after from 2019 to about before the world just ended in 2020, during that block of training, I was mainly using progressions such as what I'm going to be explaining to you today. So let's get started with that. So in my training, one of the biggest influences that I had was a book written by Alex from Alpha Destiny, Naturally Enhanced. It was I think the first training book after Starting Strength that I purchased. So after reading the Starting Strength books, the book I got next was Naturally Enhanced by Alpha Destiny. So one thing that he really pushes there is concurrent periodization. He is not the biggest fan of, basic linear progression. And because I was very much into, I want to get big and I want to get strong, how do I do this? And concurrent periodization being the planning to achieve two different goals at the same time, it just made sense to follow into that path and run a concurrent program. So in his book, he explains volume days and intensity days. I've kind of rebranded them in a way, or renamed them as size days and strength days, as I will discuss on this channel, mainly because you cannot separate volume from intensity, and you can't have intensity without volume. These two things need to be together at all times, but the way that they fit together will vary depending on the goal of the day. If your goal is size, you are going to bias toward volume and you are going to take a step back on intensity, but they still need to be there. If you are biasing more towards strength, you need to actually build a base of performance and accumulate a lot of volume with higher percentages. It's just not going to be as high as you would on a size day. So it just kind of reorients the day, helps people kind of understand what I mean. Because if I say, oh, it's a high intensity day, they run the risk of saying, oh, I don't need to do volume, I just need to max out. Or if I say a volume day, that means I don't need to train hard, I just need to do a lot of volume. And both of those are misapplications of it. So that's why I kind of like to discuss them as size days or bodybuilding days and strength days or powerlifting days. However you want to kind of make that make sense to you will serve you much better than just trying to think volume day and intensity day, at least in my opinion. So with a strength day, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to be training hard enough, but you are going to be avoiding true failure. The thing is, the goal of strength is to become stronger over time. You can't do that if on the very first training session, you just go balls out, like balls to the wall, you max out, and where do you go from there? Do you hit a new max the next time you go to train? No, that's not what's going to happen. On a strength day, the goal is progression over time. So you're going to be accumulating more volume with more sets, because if you're training with heavier loads, you won't be able to get as many reps as you would with a lighter load. So that's why when you have more strength focused days, you will typically find that doing more sets and accumulating your volume with disadvantageous exercises that are very highly specific will be much better for you. So when I say that, that means, like, let's say on a bench press day, you do your bench, but then you supplement it with a close grip bench, an incline bench, a dumbbell bench press. If you are squatting, you would do, let's say you do high bar and then you do some front squats right after, or let's say you do low bar and then you do front squats right after to get a little bit more targeted volume. That's what I kind of mean on a strength day. Now on a size day, you are going to be training much closer to failure. So hypertrophy occurs in a spectrum. So long as you're training sufficiently close to failure, it doesn't matter if you're using 30% of your 1 rep max to 80% of your 1 rep max. Doesn't really matter. But the thing is, every single trainer, every single lifter, athlete, whatever, is always going to be held under the constraint of time. So as far as it matters to be efficient, it's just a lot faster to hit failure with higher loads than it would be with a lighter load. But regardless, you're going to be training closer to failure on size days. And the reason why you can get away with this is because you're doing a lot of exercises that are a bit less specific to strength, or just because the amount of weight that you're lifting is still able to, like, you're still able to recover from it fairly well, even if you train to failure. So you're doing more reps per set, you're using relatively lighter weights. Typically on a strength day, I kind of have most of my work done with 75 to 90% of my 1 rep max on the free weight movements. On size days, it typically hovers around 50 to about 75% on the size day. And these movements are less specific toward strength. So these are movements that you kind of feel a bit more. So one example would be on a strength day, I'm trying to get better on the bench press, so I do the barbell bench press. But on a size day, like a size upper kind of day, maybe my main press would actually be a weighted dip, because me personally, I actually feel my chest way more as a result of doing dips than I do on bench press. So that could be a choice there. The naming of the days, the strength day versus the size day, allows you to better make decisions of what exercises you do and whatnot. But let's say I am trying to get more frequency on the bench press, I will do a day where I'm trying to improve my bench press strength, so I'll be lifting fairly heavy on the bench. But on my size day, I'll be trying to get more volume on the bench, so I'll use a lighter weight but pushing closer to failure with that same movement, so I get that 2 times per week frequency, get that technique, get that practice, get those touches on the bar, and I can improve from there. Another thing that I really like to do when it comes down to progressing on the concurrent model is the use of what I have come to recognize or learn as evolving rep ranges and the rep goal system. I did not know what these were called when I was doing them. So when I started training, I started learning a bit more. I did not actually know what an evolving rep range was. I just knew that, all right, I'm going to start out with this amount of reps and then build into this amount of reps. I think part of the reason why I did that was because I plateaued pretty hard on a 5x5. Then I watched an Alan Thrall video saying how what you could do is, instead of adding 5 pounds next week on all 5 sets, just add 5 pounds on the last set, hit 5 reps. Then the next week is you do, so that's 4x5, and then on the last set of 5, so 4x5, and then you do a 1x5 with 5 pounds more. The next week you do a 3x5 with the same weight that you did in week 1, but then on the last 2 sets you add those 5 pounds again. So let's say it's 135 for 4 sets of 5, and then on a 5th set you do 140. Then the next week it's 3 sets of 5 at 135, then 2 sets at 140 for 5 reps, and then you just repeat that until you get to a point where you're in a completely new range of, or a completely new weight for those first couple sets. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, I'll make a video discussing that. I took that idea of just adding weight on the last set and applied it to the volume. So rather than adding weight, I decided to add reps. So let's say I did a 5x3. The next week I would do a 5x4. Then I would do a 5x5. Add weight, go back down to 5x3. Add 5x4, 5x5, add weight, and then run that through. And I would do that to actually progress. That is kind of like an example of what my earlier evolving rep ranges kind of look like, but it's very different from how I kind of use them now and how I understand them now. When it comes down to size though, I would use something that was more similar to the rep goal system, namely because I was doing something more akin to AMRAPs. Rather than just doing a AMRAP on the last set, I took a set number that was constant, so 3 sets, and I would do as many reps as possible with that. And then the goal of step loading. So step loading allows you to stick with the weight for the extended amount of time, and you get a lot better with that weight. So you really let the adaptation to that weight solidify before you move forward. And I think that's very useful, especially when you do run into that wall of linear progression where you just keep adding weight, you just keep adding weight, you just keep adding weight. You add weight because yes, you're building strength, yes, you're building muscle, but more so because you're building technique. That first 50 to 100 pounds that you add on your lifts are more so due to technique than anything else. The next 50 to 100 pounds that you add on that lift will be because you got bigger. So you need to actually stick with certain weights a bit longer, and you do that by improving your reps in reserve with them, or what I have said many times is turning a 5 rep max into a 10 rep max. If you improve your strength endurance, that means your total volume and then tonnage that you're accumulating is going up. That means you're getting bigger. So that's one thing I really liked about step loading, and then that was how I kind of applied it into my training. So let's actually see how this worked. So I kind of looked through some old training logs and some old training notes that I had, and this is kind of essentially what I can present to you in a way that might be applicable. So let's start with a strength day, right? So on the strength day, I would start out, let's say I write down, all right, 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 6 reps, and I start out with 80% of my 1 rep max. I do 3 sets of 3, 3 sets of 4, and then week 2, 3 sets of 4, week 3, 3 sets of 5, week 4, 3 sets of 6, deload or whatever. Then I go back into it with 4 sets of 4 with the same weight, and then I run through this progression. So eventually I go from 9 reps to 30 reps, and once I get there, so I've really built this huge base of just volume with a specific weight, and then I take a much bigger jump. Whereas with most linear progressions, you add 5 pounds or 10 pounds. I'm adding 5%, which, let's say my max at the time was 225. 5% of 225 is much bigger than a 5-pound jump. So, but because I'm going from, 30 reps with 225, I can add, let's say, 10 pounds or more, and then still do just 9 reps. So that allows me to continue that progression. Other way is if I keep sets constant, is I just do 3 sets of 3 to 6, and I would do 3 by 3, 3 by 4, 3 by 5, 3 by 6, add weight, and then repeat. So that's one way of running a evolving rep range, where you just don't add weight until you hit all 3 sets with the top amount of reps in that range. So those are 2 very simple ways of doing evolving rep ranges. If you are a subscriber to the Natural Hypertrophy channel, he has a whole playlist of discussing his way of doing evolving rep ranges, which works, makes sense, and I think is very useful for keeping the tonnage you accumulate very high quality, essentially. Because if you take a weight that, like at 3 by 3, you're probably sandbagging a bit, and at 3 by 6, you're probably sandbagging just a little bit more. So, but the thing is, you solidify your gains with that weight, you solidify your adaptation to that weight. So it's good, but you're never really in that optimal Goldilocks zone of using weight that's heavy enough, but not too light. But I still think that this is a fine way of just trying to progress on your bench press, because on your strength days, you should be training, in my opinion, 1 to 2 reps in reserve on all your strength work. Now on a size day, here's where you can really just try to go one rep shy of failure. I would actually extend the range on strength days to be maybe 2 to 4 reps shy of failure, just so that way the form is always nice and crisp. But on size days, go to failure. Like train right at technical failure. So when I say failure, I mean technical failure. When form breaks down, that's it. You should never actually fail in your training. So choose a weight. What I like to do was I would choose a weight that's around 50 to 60% of my 1 rep max. I would set a rep goal for a single set. So let's say I want to hit a specific weight for 15 reps. I double that number. So now I have to hit 30 reps, and I have to perform as few sets as possible to hit that goal of 30. So one thing that I did for me personally was I wanted to hit 225 for 20. So every time on my size days, I would do 40 reps of the bench press with 225, and I would try to do this in as few sets as possible, and I would only go up in weight if I could hit that 225 for 20, and then I would just go from there. I think the closest I got was 18. But this kind of just shows you what I like to do when it comes to pushing progression on a volume day or a size day. This is just one option. This isn't like and this is for the main exercise also. It's not entirely what I do for each exercise present in that day. There's more videos I have planned to kind of discuss that. This just kind of shows the difference of how you would build or how I build my strength, as well as trying to get a hypertrophy response on those days, and how I structured my training. So I hope you found this useful. I hope there's some ideas here that you can kind of take, play with, modify, adjust, and make them work for you. But I just wanted to give you some examples of what I did, especially kind of in that late novice stage of my training, of how I actually continue to blow past my plateaus, because I plateaued pretty hard and I had to really take a step back and examine how I was progressing so that I could further my progression even more. So I hope you find this video useful. My name is Karelsa King, standstrength.com. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.